The gate to my estate buzzed at 7 a.m., a shrill noise cutting through the quiet of my morning coffee. I glanced at the security feed, expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor with a complaint about my roses again. Instead, I saw her Karen Wentworth, decked out in a fur coat that screamed money and a badge glinting in her hand, waving it like she owned the entire district. She was yelling at my security guard, Tom, her voice sharp enough to slice through steel. "Open this gate now, or I'll have you arrested for obstructing an officer." I froze, coffee cup halfway to my lips. Karen, the HOA's self-appointed queen, was impersonating a cop at my gate. Me, chief of police for the entire district. The audacity was almost admirable. I'd known Karen for years, ever since I moved into this gated community. She ruled the HOA like a dictator, fining people for untrimmed hedges, dictating mailbox colors, and once tried to ban kids' lemonade stands for cluttering the aesthetic. But this was a new low. I set my cup down, grabbed my real badge, and headed outside, my pulse quickening with a mix of anger and curiosity. What game was she playing? As I approached, Karen's tirade grew louder. Tom, a retired veteran who didn't flinch under pressure, looked rattled. Karen was jabbing her fake badge at him, claiming she was investigating violations on my property. "This house is an eyesore," she screeched, pointing at my modest garden. "I'm shutting it down." I noticed red spray paint on the gate, her handiwork, no doubt, marking it with delinquent and sloppy letters. She'd even knocked over my mailbox, leaving it dented in the grass. The woman was a one-person wrecking crew. "Karen," I said, stepping into view, my voice calm but firm. She spun around, her sunglasses slipping down her nose. "Chief Ellison," she stammered, but quickly recovered, puffing out her chest. "I'm here on official business. This property violates HOA codes, and as an appointed officer, I demand access." Her badge was laughably fake plastic, with security misspelled as security. I almost laughed, but the vandalism and her gall kept my temper simmering. "Appointed officer?" I raised an eyebrow, holding up my badge, the real one with the district seal. "Funny, because I don't recall deputizing you." Her face twitched, but she doubled down, insisting she'd been granted authority by the HOA board. That's when Tom chimed in, his voice steady now. "Ma'am, you also told me you'd have my pension revoked. Care to explain that?" Karen's eyes darted, but she scoffed, dismissing him as irrelevant. Then came the twist. A car pulled up, tires crunching on gravel. Out stepped Mrs. Nguyen, the quiet widow who lived down the street. She was trembling, clutching a crumpled letter. "Chief, she did this to me too," Mrs. Nguyen said, her voice breaking. The letter was a forged eviction notice, signed with Karen's name, claiming Mrs. Nguyen's home was condemned for minor landscaping issues. Karen had been terrorizing the neighborhood, posing as a cop to bully residents into compliance. My blood boiled. This wasn't just about my gate anymore. I called for backup, my phone already dialed to the station. Karen's bravado faltered as she realized the tables were turning. "You can't touch me," she snapped, tossing her hair. "My husband a lawyer." I ignored her, inspecting the damage. The gate was bent, the spray paint still wet, and my mailbox was beyond repair. She'd come prepared with a megaphone, now lying broken on the ground, and a bag of citations she'd been handing out like candy. Each one was a fake, filled with legal jargon that didn't hold up under scrutiny. 2 officers arrived, their cruiser lights flashing. Karen's face paled, but she kept up the act, demanding to speak to their supervisor. "That would be me," I said, crossing my arms. The officers, Jenkins and Rodriguez, barely hid their grins as they cuffed her. Impersonating an officer, vandalism, and fraud. I listed, watching her squirm. "You've been busy, Karen." She screamed about lawsuits, but her voice cracked, the confidence draining as reality hit. As they led her to the cruiser, Mrs. Nguyen stepped forward, her eyes fierce despite her small frame. "You made me think I'd lose my home," she said, her voice steady now. "You scare my grandkids." The crowd that had gathered, neighbors drawn by the commotion, murmured in agreement. Karen's reign of terror had touched more lives than I'd realized. One man, Mr. Patel, admitted she'd fine him $500 for a non-compliant fence that was perfectly within code. Another neighbor, a young mom, said Karen had threatened to report her to CPS over a tricycle left in her driveway. The stories poured out, each one fueling the crowd's anger. Karen's downfall was swift. The evidence was overwhelming: her fake badge, the forged documents, the spray paint in her car with her fingerprints. At the station, she tried to spin a sob story, claiming she was protecting the neighborhood's value. But the paper trail led to a deeper truth. She'd been extorting money from residents, pocketing fines for her own gain. Her husband, the lawyer, showed up, red-faced and silent, unable to defend her. The HOA board, mortified, stripped her of her position that same day. In court, Karen's arrogance crumbled. She stood before the judge, her designer clothes replaced by a plain jumpsuit, her head bowed as the charges were read. The community showed up in droves, not to gloat, but to reclaim their peace. Mrs. Nguyen testified, her voice strong, about the fear Karen had instilled. Tom spoke of his decades of service, only to be demeaned by a woman with a plastic badge. Even I took the stand, detailing the vandalism and the broader impact of her actions. The judge sentenced her to 3 years, with restitution for the damages and fines she'd imposed. As I walked out of the courthouse, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. It felt like a new beginning. Mrs. Nguyen invited everyone to her house for tea, a small gesture that turned into a block party. Kids played, neighbors laughed, and for the first time in years, the HOA felt like a community, not a battleground. I looked at my repaired gate, the paint scrubbed clean, and felt a quiet pride. We'd taken back our home. Karen's story is a reminder. Power built on lies always crumbles. It's not just about catching the culprit. It's about standing up for what's right together. What do you think? Where do we draw the line between enforcing rules and abusing power? Share your thoughts.